I really needed to make this video. I think I just invented a completely new method of playing jazz guitar, or I've missed something in my education. I've been playing since I was 12, but I only realized this like 2 weeks ago. And I think this is like such a major thing. It's actually a minor thing. That's a hint, by the way, that I can't believe that I've never learned this before. So I think you need to see this video whether you are an aspiring jazz guitar student like me, or if you are a jazz guitar teacher, because this will allow you to understand better what your students may be missing, even if you already know the information that I'm about to tell you somehow, but I missed it. Okay, so I'm not a jazz guitar teacher. I'm more like a meditation teacher. Mantra music is what I make, and I'm really interested in jazz. And I've always wanted to play in a jazz band, but I've never played in a jazz band because I've never felt that I was good enough, and I still don't play in a jazz band. But here's the thing, as every guitar teacher will tell you, the holy grail for any jazz guitar student is to make the changes in the tune, so to follow the changes in the tonality. And they teach so many different things to accomplish this, and then they hope that it somehow makes sense in the end, but for me at least, it never really did. I have a theory as to why these teachers teach in the way that they do and what they may be missing. So if you want to study jazz, like everybody knows that playing jazz is hard, right? That's part of the attraction, that it's hard. But at the same time, it's so hard that you're always looking for ways to simplify. So how can you understand what's happening in a tune in a more simplified way? And I've never really found the key for this, but until now, and it has to do with this little shape that I'm going to show on screen. This is the minor triad shape, and this is the key to unlocking everything, and I'll explain how that works later. But first, I'd like to explain what it solves and why this needs to be solved. Many teachers are missing to convey this information. So when you look at some of the great jazz guitar teachers online, people like Jens Larsen, Marc-André Séguin comes to mind, and Christian van Hemert, and there are many others. Now, I think highly of these teachers. I think they're really great. I learned a lot from all of them. But it never clicked. Eventually, it never clicked. And I think the reason is they don't eventually understand the limitations that their students have, because they themselves are talented. They themselves are good at guitar. So it's somewhat like a fitness influencer that has a wonderful body, genetically predisposed to have a six-pack, and then goes online to tell people, if you eat what I eat, you'll get a six-pack. But it doesn't work because you don't share the same genetics. Or a yoga teacher who is very flexible, that can never understand what exactly it is that is limiting people from reaching their toes, right? So, because they don't have that experience. And so what my limitation has been, in a nutshell, with learning jazz guitar, is that when you transition from rock and blues playing to jazz, it's like there's this completist approach. So the people that I just talked about, they have often studied at conservatories or high-level music schools, and they have a completist approach. So they go like, okay, so you have to learn the major scale. That's the thing that you need to learn when you learn jazz, right? Learn the major scale. And I remember following a course by a guy called Frank Vignola, which was quite a wonderful course, like a complete jazz course. And he starts with 111 permutations of the major scale. So you have to learn the major scale, and then in 111 different ways, I think it was. And it ingrains certain patterns in you, and it's useful because you carry that information with you for many years, but it doesn't tell you how to make the changes. So what it does, and this is what I see these other teachers do as well, they start with this concept: what are all the legal notes that you can play? But they don't start with the concept, what are the good notes that you can play? And the good notes, that's a subset of all the legal notes. And so what you learn is this entire field of stuff that you should just sort of learn, but you never really learn how to connect with what sounds good. And of course, this is being tried, right? So I followed Marc-André Séguin's master program for a while, and I know that he has given up on that program because I think it didn't work, and this may be the reason why it didn't work. At least I think this is why, and I think this is what is lacking in a lot of jazz guitar education for like people who are not musically gifted necessarily, or not so musically gifted like me. And that's like the gestalt problem. So what's the gestalt problem? I call it the gestalt problem of learning jazz. So there's this picture. If you look at it one way, you see a rabbit. And if you look at it the other way, you see a duck. But the gestalt is you can see you can see the rabbit, but you can't see the duck at the same time. You have to take another sort of mental position in order to see the duck. That's it's like a visual brain thing. You have to make a switch, a mental switch, but you can't entertain both of those perspectives at the same time. And I think what is lacking in a lot of jazz education is that you are expected to entertain these different perspectives at the same time, but I was never able to do that. So to just summarize the approaches, like for example, the master course by Marc-André Séguin, it's like, okay, learn the major scale. Now learn to play the same thing in different positions, so you can play it anywhere on the neck, and then learn the chord scales, the chord scale approach. So if you're playing the second chord, then you learn the Dorian chord scale mode. Then you play the fifth, you play Mixolydian, and then you go back to the Dorian. So that's how you learn 2-5-1 progressions. But of course that gives you a sense of the general location of where those notes are, but it isn't going to empower you to play good solo, because if you work with those notes, it still sounds like you're running up and down scales. And so then you get other information. You still need other information to make that work. And then what you start to learn, that's another part of the teaching, is you follow the chords by playing the third and the seven of the chord, which are like the guide tones, I think they're called. And so you have to follow these through the structure of the song, and then that will give you sort of anchor points to solo. But my problem is that if I play the 3 and the 7 of each chord, which I can hardly memorize where all of these things are, it's very difficult for me to see that, okay, I'm on the 3rd and the 7th of that chord, and I could play that arpeggio or that chord scale with it. Like somehow I can visualize the 3rd and the 7th, but I cannot at the same time visualize the arpeggio or visualize the chord scale. Or I can visualize the chord scale, but then I can't visualize the 3rd and the 7th. Or I can visualize the arpeggio, but then I can't visualize the chord scale. So it's this thing where you can either entertain this perspective or the other perspective, but not both at the same time. Yet a lot of jazz education depends on you being able to entertain all of these perspectives at the same time, and that it somehow clicks. So this is not a way to learn to follow the changes in a jazz guitar context. Not for me anyway, it doesn't work. So now I found what works, And here we go. Okay, so this method is really simple, and it has just 2 rules. And the first rule is everything is a minor triad. And you don't pick from all the notes that you could possibly play, but you just pick the notes that sound good on a particular chord. What I'm saying is that whatever chord or chord sequence that you're seeing in the standard, you will be able to find a minor chord that sounds good over it. So I'm going to play an example, which is a standard called Just Friends, and it starts with a B major 7. And on the B major 7, or on a major 7 chord, you go down to the relative minor and you play that triad. So in the case of B major 7, you go down 3 frets and you end up at the G minor, and you play the G minor. And the next chord is the B minor 7. Now on a minor chord, you just play the minor triad from the root. So in this case, you play the minor triad of B7. And then there's an E7, which is the dominant chord. And the dominant is sort of like where things get a bit unstable because it can go different directions. So what do you play on the dominant chord? You can play the minor triad of the 5th. So if you have the E7 chord and you look up the 5th, you'll see that you're also on the B flat. So you'll play a B flat triad there. That's the whole trick of it. So on a major chord, you go down a minor 3rd, you play the minor triad. On a minor chord, you just play the minor triad on the root. On a dominant chord, you play the minor triad on the 5th. And if you have a 7 flat 5 chord, for example, you go up a minor triad, and that's where you play the minor. And if you have an altered dominant chord, you just play the minor from the root. That's all there is to it. It sounds complicated, but you'll see how it works in practice. So you never really play the root of the chord unless it's minor. So here's how it works. Let me just play it for you. I'm gonna play the first 8 bars of Just Friends. And it starts on a B flat major 7, on which I'm gonna play the G minor chord. Then it goes to the B flat minor 7, on which I'm gonna play B flat minor triad, then stay on the B flat minor triad. Then it goes to F major 7, on which you could play D minor, but I like to play the A minor. And then it goes to A flat minor, on which you play the A flat minor, and to D flat minor 7, where you stay on that A flat minor. And it sounds like this, and this is not the greatest solo in the world, I realize that, but you need to listen to the fact that I'm making the changes in a very good way, and that you can use this as a beginning and you can build on this. So this is what it sounds like. G minor, and back to G minor, B flat, A flat, A flat, So that's the first rule, everything can be converted to minor. And the second rule is you don't always need to change the triad. So it often stays the same. And of course, it depends on the standard, right? And because the context changes, but you're playing the same triad, the notes get like a different meaning, and they create all these wonderful tensions that then will finally resolve if you just follow this. So the example I have here is of my Funny Valentine, which starts on C minor 6, on which I would play C minor. And then there's a D minor 7 flat 5, and on this I would play an F, and it goes to a G7 flat 9, which is an altered dominant chord, on which I would play a G minor, and then go back to C minor 7, F7, stay on C minor. Then the chords change to A flat, major 7, on which I'll go to an F minor, and then comes the F minor 7, on which I'll stay on the F minor, and then comes the D half diminished 7. I'll still stay on the F minor, and then finally you'll get a resolution on the G7 flat 9, on which I'll go to the G minor. And it sounds like this, which I think sounds really cool, especially like the last 4 bars. We're on C now. Sounds bluesy, right? Go back to F. Stay on F. Still stay on F minor. And now we resolve. Back to C minor. F and G minor. C minor. Stay on C minor. Go to F and stay on F. So this is like how you can make the changes. You really just follow this principle. So I haven't seen this way of playing jazz guitar anywhere else. So if you know of another resource, or if you know how this works harmonically, let me know. But this is like amazing, right? I find it amazing. So I think it will help a lot of people, because it just orients you to like where the changes are happening, and where you can find like at least a few notes that sound good, and then from there you can expand. But this is definitely the beginning. So thanks for watching. I hope you save this video, subscribe to my channel, even though I'm probably never going to make another jazz guitar video. Thanks.